Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the TV Pilot's License Flight number 45 with service to Miami. We ask that you please fasten your headphones at this time, secure your podcasting device, and remember, if you are a single man from Miami under the age of 80, please press your call button as the Drug Enforcement Agency has some questions for you about your luggage.
Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Jeff Kurbis, joined by Max Singer and Rich Inman. How you boys doing today? In the same screen.
I know. I went to the supermarket and I responded to a classified ad. Now I live in Rich's house.
Thank you for seeing my ad. I'm going to keep doing that.
Well, gentlemen, this week we are talking about possibly one of the all-time greats, actually considered one of the all-time greats of television, and that is Golden Girls. And while we may have some thoughts about this show, it appears we have a new co-pilot aboard to talk to us about everything from wedding day etiquette to the appropriate ways to mourn. Our guest this week is an actress and writer who is currently on strike. Remember, we are a WGA strong podcast over here. Remember to support the WGA, and please welcome Celia Finkelstein. Celia, thank you so much for joining.
Hi. How are you?
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We're so happy to have you here. Well, Celia, you brought Golden Girls to us. We were talking about it a little bit.
Never heard of it before.
Yeah, no, we had no idea what this was. Someone asked me who Betty White was, and I said, oh, you know, from The Proposal? No, I'm completely
From The Proposal?
But with that being said, why did you bring the Golden Girls to us? What's your relationship with this show like?
This show was like my mom, which like no shade to my mom. She was a fine mom, but like I just like grew up on this show. It was like every Thursday night we would watch this show. I have very distinct memories of just my mom and me like sat there and watched that show. I grew up on it, and it feels like home to me. Those women feel like home to me. And I actually had the incredible good fortune to meet someone who ran the show for the last 4 years it was on. And I said exactly that, like this show was like my family, and it made me want to be an actor. And he said he gets that all the time. Like I'm not alone in that feeling. It created a fan base that feels attached to it in a really deep emotional way.
There is something, you know, I was actually talking to my mom about this this episode that we were going to do, and she was shocked when I told her how many of my friends consider this their favorite TV show. Like, still, it is like it's a show that finished, you know, when we were all very young, and there's no reason that it could have except for reruns and syndication. There's no way that we would have really seen the gravitas of the show like when it was on and new. And so many people saw this finale, and it's like it's crazy how long the legacy of the show has lasted.
Yeah, and I feel like it's getting new fans even now. Like I feel like people have still started watching it. I think it's incredible. I mean, it was a show ahead of its time, you know, in its time. So I think it still certainly there are parts of it that are pretty problematic, but for the most part, I think it's like a really thoughtful, forward-thinking show.
Yeah, the passing down of Golden Girls between generations and into like a new, younger generation is maybe one of like 3 or 4 good things the internet has ever done.
It's true.
Well, super excited to talk a little bit more about this show, but before we dive too far in, for folks that are here for the first time, maybe to listen to Celia, or maybe have just found our podcast, Max, do you mind telling folks at home what this podcast is all about?
Here at TV Pilot's License, we break down and analyze the pilot episodes of some of TV's most famous, or in some cases, infamous shows. We look back on these pilot episodes, how they came to be, and decide if they're effective pilots and making us want to keep watching these shows, if they can be made today in cases of spinoffs, so they deserve to come on back. We've got a whole bevy of episodes wherever you get your podcasts from, so go stream us on your favorite podcast provider. Go watch us on YouTube to see our smiling faces. And if it is your first time flying with us, then welcome aboard today.
And Rich, what is your question of the week?
Well, I don't know what you're talking about because we've never covered a bad show ever once. Still Seventh Heaven fan club over here.
Oh my God, I love Seventh Heaven.
Oh boy, we could have really used you last week.
What a chaotic, messy show. I love it.
So I'm super curious because I think one of the really nice, enduring parts of the show is showing like similar age female friendships that kind of endure past like the age of their like relationships, like their romantic relationships and stuff like that. It's something that has like, I think it's just been indicative of like solid friendships together, whether it's like, shitting on each other or just like overall support, like blanket support, and just like, the ups and downs of friendship. Knowing that in mere decades, Florida will be no more. Where do you and with the rise of rent and mortgage costs and interest rates and everything like that, we may all have to live in a house like this anyways. So, right. What part of the country do you guys want to retire to together?
Does it have to be America? My plan is to get the hell out of here. Yeah, no, I'm going to the French countryside. And actually, all my female friends and I have a loose plan of exactly this. Like when our husbands die, we're going to go and get a compound somewhere in France and die together.
I love that. And die together. Oh, it's a Jamestown fantasy. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Max, what about you?
So I watch a lot of History Channel, and one of the shows that I've come to like is called How the States Got Their Shapes.
Oh, God.
And on that show, I learned that Maine is the Saudi Arabia for water. So as we, encounter more and more ecological disasters and, the inability to live in certain parts of the country, I'm going to where that sweet, sweet fresh water is, baby. So you can find me in the nice coastal part of Maine, not the spooky Stephen King part of Maine, with all my friends hanging out in a house and, eating lobsters.
That sounds water.
It sounds like we're all going to get murdered in these plans.
Rich, what about you?
Oh boy, I actually have a global warming plan to move to Maine or to Minnesota, so this is going to work out quite well. So Fairly Well, California, I will be going to the home of Target and what's Juicy Lucy's, stuff like that. And or I'm going to go up and live in the Stephen King murder mansion with Max.
Yeah, Rich, you can live in my guest room. I'll make sure it's ready for you. Just give me 20 years. So as far as myself, there is something ever so appealing about the countryside of Canada for some reason. Am I Canadian? No. But I just look at it and I'm like, that looks really nice and peaceful. Very much like Maine, except I'm not in the United States. So I think that's a large benefit.
Is it like a Handmaid's Tale fantasy for you?
Maybe Iceland. Iceland sounds pretty dope, actually. But if we're worried about global warming, that might not be there. But Rich, thank you so much for that question of the week. Before we get to our synopsis, just a quick word from our sponsors. Now, let's talk about our show. So, of course, we are talking about Golden Girls. If you want to watch it before you listen to us, you can find it on Hulu. But a quick synopsis from myself. 4 mature women live together in Miami and experience the joys and angst of their golden years. Max, I think that requires a little bit more backstory about how this show was made.
Of course. So today we're talking about the pilot episode for The Golden Girls, titled The Engagement, which originally aired on NBC September 14th, 1985. And we're going to be talking about the show's creator and writer by the name of Susan Harris today. Harris is a legend of TV, a recipient of the WGA's Patty Chayefsky Award for Achievement in TV Writing, and is a member of the Television Academy Hall of Fame. Earlier on in her career, she worked for shows like The Partridge Family, as well as Norman Lear's All in the Family and its spin-off Maude, also starring B. Arthur of Golden Girls. And her work on Maude really launched her into prominence. She receives the Humanitas Prize for her work on the episode Maude's Dilemma, which really centered on the topic of abortion, kind of the first time in American pop culture that this was brought to a mass audience in like a primetime sitcom type of way. And from there, she goes on to create 2 very successful shows over at ABC, the sitcom Soap, starring my old high school voice teacher, Diana Canova, as well as its spinoff, Benson, a very big, long-running smash hit.
I can't wait to do Soap. We have to do Soap real soon.
Yeah, I'll give you all the Diana Canova stories. So we're going to now shift ahead a little bit from Benson, and I want to start off with a quote that Harris gave to the New York Times in an article that originally was published on September 22nd, 1985, a week after the show's premiere. A woman's worth is tied into what she looks like. At 82, Cary Grant could still be a romantic lead, but on television, a woman over the age of 50 is cast as an axe murderer. So, in 1984, NBC's upfronts to promote their upcoming season, comedian Selma Diamond from Night Court, who played one of their bailiffs, does this sketch where she creates a joke show called Miami Nice about old people sitting around playing pinochle.
Miami Nice.
And then NBC Vice President Warren Littlefield and President Brandon Tartikoff, our boy B-Tarts, they get the idea that this joke could be more than a joke, and they might be onto something. Littlefield is quoted as saying, "You're looking for Magnum, and he's impossible to find, but we could cast Miami Nice." So they bring in TV producers Paul Witt and Tony Thomas, and they have them pitch an idea that they have for this concept. And as Witt and Thomas recall, we don't like your idea, but we'll give you one, which may be the best example of just like 4 white men pitching a TV show of all time. Take some women around 60.
Take some women.
Society has written them off.
Jesus.
They've said they're over the hill. We want them to be feisty as hell and having a great time. Having a great time. So Witt doubts that this show could be made, and Tartikoff calls his bet and gives them an automatic 13-episode deal before a single idea or word has been written on this.
What the fuck is TV?
Wow.
This is what they're striking against.
Yeah, so I'm getting back to the main topic. Don't worry. So Paul Witt is married to Susan Harris and brings her on to write this pilot idea. Harris, after doing the runs of Soap and Benson, where she basically was writing every single episode of these incredibly lengthy runs by herself, is trying to pivot away from network TV. She wants to get into features, but she loves the idea. She wants the idea to write grown-up characters that weren't necessarily seen on TV at this time. Harris claims that she'd never really been excited about network ideas before this show, and has gone on the record as saying it's kind of pathetic this show was television's baby steps, but she just felt like she had no choice but to write it. I'm going to end this with a quote from Betty White on the show. White says, "Golden Girls proves that women don't self-destruct at a certain age." And I hope in the next hour or so we can prove Betty White true in that.
For sure.
What, like these insane backroom deals, and like it makes it feel like the only way you can actually get anything done in Hollywood is if like you're on a bunch of cocaine and you're very loose with your money, or you can get a job by accidentally running over an executive's dog in like Trader Joe's parking lot. It's like it has to be like this bizarre meet cute, or just like a frivolous throwing away of money. There is no in between.
Well, I also want to say, and I don't know, sadly don't know a ton about this sort of golden age of television, but this for me highlights a lot of why we're striking, and I promise not to talk about the strike too much, but like these executives, these CEOs, Brandon Tartikoff, Warren Littlefield, actually did give shows a chance at least.
Yes.
They were like, this sounds probably unmarketable, but like, let's just see. And like the backroom deal of it all is a little annoying. Like, but
also the throwing least, some women around.
Right, exactly. Or just take some old ladies and make a show. But I think there was something really special about people who enjoyed television, cared about television, and were like, I'm interested to see where this goes. So let me just give you a show and see what you could do with it, as opposed to like, what's the most amount of work I can get out of you for the least amount of money, and also like I don't really care if the show's good.
Yeah,
whatever.
it's not about like IP. How do we market? How do we
Right.
sell? It's just let's just go all in on an idea that we believe in. Let's get the best people possible to execute that idea, and let's just make it happen.
Yeah, tell that to my Golden Girls Funko Pop collection.
Yeah, like, I mean, if we didn't have people like B-Tarts in the 70s and 80s and like 90s, built like doing shows like this or taking chances, we don't have the podcast that we're on right now, in all honesty, because there's a lot of TV that was made that inspired others to make amazing television that we are seeing today, and
I don't
folks like you, Celia, are fighting for.
I don't think asking people who like TV to be in charge of making TV is that big of an ask.
It seems like it should be a pretty straight line. But,
it should.
What do I know?
If you want to run a network, the number one prerequisite should be: do you enjoy watching TV?
Right.
I'm not going to talk about a certain executive from a certain giant that has one of our co-hosts' names, but know, we'll just leave it at that.
Oh, I actually don't know who that is.
So
then it's you.
Oh no! I like TV sometimes.
Oh my god. You're on a TV podcast, Rich. You co-host a TV podcast.
I know, and famously, I'm wishy-washy on a lot of our on the
idea. Well, before we get too off the rails, let's talk about Golden Girls, right? The reason we're all here. Celia, thank you for being a friend. Being just an iconic song as it is.
Should we all stand for our national anthem?
Yeah, exactly.
When you hear this song, being the fan that you are of the show, what are the emotions you feel? Because I will admit, this is the first time I've seen this pilot. I'm really upset about saying that out loud. But I instantly already have this emotion of like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna relax on the couch now and just like let my 4 new best friends tell me about their day.
I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, like that song, I know that song backwards and forwards. I love that song. I had a Golden Girls / Steel Magnolias, that's another podcast, themed birthday one year, and that was just on repeat at the party. I mean, it's like the warmest, like most lovely, one of the most lovely theme songs. Back in the days when there was a theme song that mattered, it fills me with like, warm fuzzies instantly. I love it. I love it.
Absolutely amazing. Max, we do a lot of TV shows where there's like a cold open, right? To set the tone. Like, I hate that I'm referencing this, but I think of Big Bang Theory and that very ridiculous scene in the sperm bank. But what did you think about a show like this not having that cold open to introduce us to some of the characters that we were going to be on this journey with?
I mean, it feels really welcoming. It almost feels like an overture to when you're seeing a musical. Like, it welcomes you in. It kind of sets like what the environment you're going to be in is. You get like a feel for the music. And this is a song that, kind of like we talked about the Golden Girls earlier, where it's a thing that's found new life. This is an older song that had a different vocalist come on, and it found new life years after it was originally released. And I think that's almost fitting for the legacy of the show itself. And I appreciate when you have like a tone set for you before the first scene even happens. It kind of just like eases you into it.
Yeah. And also, I don't think in this entire pilot we leave the house at any point. So I think doing a cold open would really only be super relevant to the nature of the script if they actually had different setups, different scenes and stuff like that they were trying to do. But you literally only go from kitchen to bedroom to living room the entire time, which is like really awesome.
A show that I can relate to.
Yeah, exactly. This is our pandemic crew.
I had a thought, Max, to your point about the song having new life and the sort of legacy of the show. I also think those actresses, they were stars on Broadway
100%.
And in shows before. They certainly, and I think now, might have been sort of relegated to really crap sort of mom roles had they not been given this this new life on this show too. I do think there's a lot of feelings of renewal that sort of flow through this whole show in so many different ways. I just had never thought about that.
That's such a lovely point. And like, as we are we're introduced to our first lead of this show, B. Arthur playing Dorothy, coming in, reminding me of every teacher I ever had in middle school or high school in South Florida, of being so upset that she has to teach, but somehow still showing up to work every day. I mean, how do we think that this sort of sets the tone of these characters? Like, choosing to have Dorothy be the first character we meet rather than it being Rose or one of the other main leads of this show.
Yeah, when you find out that, like, she doesn't even own the house later on, it feels like it's her domain immediately. Like, obviously, when we meet Rose in a second, she feels like completely lost all the time, and that's why I love her so much. But Dorothy's comment about how all the girls are bald and the boys have, like, green hair and they with nose rings and stuff like that, I was like, I want to hang out with every student that she's teaching right now. I feel like all these people just became my friends.
Yeah. They sound real cool, actually.
I know. It's like, yeah, I've been to Silver Lake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So in this scene, we meet Coco as well. I guess, since we do normally only care about the pilot, but Celia, what is Coco's deal? Is Coco living with the ladies? Is Coco just there?
Coco never appears again.
Oh, good.
Coco's gone after the pilot.
So glad I did not get overly invested in Coco's arc.
What do you mean? He makes enchiladas rancheros. He provides a shoulder for the women. I think he wears a bathrobe. These are all traits we know about Coco.
Right. I mean, he never appears again in the series, not the pilot. But, like, I don't know Coco's deal. He makes enchiladas, and he's nice to the women, and I guess, made them iced tea at some point.
They do insinuate that he's gay, right?
I mean, he's definitely gay. Okay. But, like, I think they just, from what I gather from the reading I was doing about it, he was kind of a fifth wheel that wasn't going to ever really, like, integrate into the...
Something that I... read about this, and I'm glad we're kind of talking about this character being phased out right away, is that I guess there were people who believed that they needed to still have one male part of their ensemble.
That's so interesting.
And then the show's pilot tests so unbelievably well with audiences, particularly, B. Arthur and Betty White and all of them, that they realize, we don't actually need this element in here. We're going to promote this fourth character to a main player, and we're just going to roll with this. So they kind of like realized in the moment, this show may not be what we thought it is. Let's like reconceptualize it moving forward, and for the best, I guess.
I'm also wondering too, because for research that I've read about the show, Estelle Getty had a massive problem with doing any jokes that would be punching down. She would refuse to do any gay jokes, any jokes about domestic violence, any jokes about like people's weight and things like that. And I wonder if having, a lot of the nature of the joke writing is them teasing each other. I wonder if that would have not meshed well with her, and in the pilot, they actually do make Estelle Getty like really kind of...
Yeah, they make her the vicious one.
Yeah, they make her the most vicious one, and it's so interesting that like she rebutted that so heavily.
I mean, she's still pretty, like, they sort of couch it in, like, she had a stroke, so she says whatever she wants. Yeah. She is the most, I would say, like, I'm trying to think of a word that doesn't convey, like, a negative connotation, because I don't think it's negative. I think it's a delight. But she's sort of the one who just sort of says shit throughout the series.
Most off the cuff.
She's stroke and has no filter is wild 80s TV exposition if I've ever heard it, though.
Exactly.
Yeah. A lot of that this episode.
I know.
Yeah. Well, my favorite, that they're like, well, when you had your stroke, or when she had her stroke, she shut off the part of her brain. No. But I think, like, that's interesting. I'd never heard that about the punching down. I do think the show, like, had its moments of making jokes at people's expense, but it felt like it was done with love rather than out of some sort of malice. So that tracks to me. I more than anything, I don't think Coco being removed had anything to do with his sexuality. I think it really had more to do with just like the mechanics of the show. Mm-hmm. It being a four-hander is so much better, and the relationships between those women. He felt like a like a spoiler in a way. It was kind of like, why? I don't know why this fifth person is in the room.
Also, I am absolutely going for that job right now. You better believe I'm dropping everything in my life just to go and make cocktails for a bunch of four elderly women in Miami. That sounds fucking amazing.
I mean, yeah, why not?
So,
why not?
One of the things that I have in my notes is after we meet Rose, after we meet Blanche, the tone of the show, and I was trying to put my finger on it because there's just so many jokes going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
These women are going right after each other and like don't miss a beat.
Yeah.
Does it almost feel like a stand-up show for the most part, right? Like in the idea of you have these witty one-liners and you have the audience, like you have the canned laughter in the background almost, even though it was recorded in front of a live audience. It has that vibe of like, we talk about laundry folding shows. This is not a laundry folding show. You will miss like 5 great jokes as you're just trying to find the right sock to pair with the other sock.
I think it feels like a pilot in the sense of, you know, up top, after we meet Dorothy, there is a chunk of time dedicated to each of the other women. There is a segment just for Rose and how Rose plays off of Blanche, and we get to meet this character. Then Blanche comes in. We get a section where, you know, Blanche gets to play off of Rose and Dorothy. We get to understand her basic things. And we do this a lot throughout the episode where, yes, there is an A plot that continues through, but more so it's a chance for you to get to know these characters. And so I think that it has to be so punchline heavy because we're getting to know as much about them as we physically can in these like 20 some odd minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So couple of things. One, we have a couple of different... I would say that our A plot is that Blanche has been proposed to and is trying to figure out whether or not to say yes to this man she's only been dating for a week. But I would say that a B plot in this instance is Dorothy dealing with the concept of being old for the most part. And we get like these very subtle hints, and we have B, Arthur, just acting up a storm and commanding, you know, the metaphorical stage in this instance.
Her responses to all of these lines, or like every Betty White response to
100%
had me in stitches.
Oh my god, she's so good. I know we did the quiz for the Sex and the City episode, but I am 100% a Rose.
Well, Rich, you have some time because we do have a in-flight question.
Yeah,
we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. What do we think about this amazing house, and why is it no less than $10 million in Miami right now?
I love that they didn't shy away from the cocaine mention, like almost immediately, like in the first like minute and a half of the show. It's like no one under the age of 80 or like in this town is not a coke smuggler or something like that.
Well, you say that, but like one of the things that I really appreciate about this is, I think if you were to explain to someone about the concept of the show of like, hey, 4 older women that are supposed to be anywhere between their 50s to their late 70s are living together in a house. The jokes that you might suspect are going to be like, oh, it's a very family-friendly show as far as some of the jokes. Like this was shown on, we'll talk about how wild the show slot for this was. It was Saturdays at 8 and 9 p.m.
Oh, God.
But the other thing that sort of I appreciate is they just told jokes. They didn't care how old these actresses were. They just were like, that's a really funny joke. Put it on the page. We have 4 amazing actresses that can tell the joke no matter what.
I think that's part of why it's so beloved for so many, too. Like, I mean, I grew up on this show. I'm obviously older now. Those jokes, you don't grow out of dirty jokes. You don't grow out of, juvenile jokes. You don't grow out of like taking the piss out of your friends. And I think there is a sort of idea on television that, or up to this point, maybe there had been, but like, there's this idea that like older women don't talk like that, or like older women aren't fucking, but they are, and so what I really loved about this show was that it leaned into these women as human beings as opposed to ideas of older women.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say throughout the series, that is true. Like their jokes are tight. Their jokes are dirty. They don't shy away from anything, beyond what like parameters were set by broadcast, network.
There's a moment in the show where Estelle Getty is telling a joke, and I said the punchline out loud because it was this old Borscht Belt comic joke that like I knew from growing up with like a family that was really invested in that scene of comedy. And yeah, there's just this willingness to tell jokes and to like use these performers, deliveries as like such a strength that it's not trying to tiptoe around anything. It's not trying to avoid anything. It's just crafting the best show possible. And it's such like a great example of ensemble comedy because like every single one of them is a character. You find yourself saying, I am a this, I am a that. Yeah. You find yourself becoming attached to people. The joke clip is incredibly high in this show, maybe one of the highest we've covered. And everyone's funny. Even the supporting characters, even the people who are in one scene in this show are characters and they're humorous. And I feel like that's almost something that isn't really seen in a lot of comedies. We're trying to like blur genres and blur lines. It's just so refreshing to see a show that is just funny all the way through, from the top of the call sheet to the bottom of the call sheet. Everyone's there to tell jokes.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about one of those additional just funny people on the show. We're introduced to Sophia, played by Estelle Getty. I want to talk a little bit about the ages of these women in a little bit, but on first blush, what do we think about Sophia just coming in like a bat out of hell? Her home has just burned down to the ground, and we cannot trust her as a narrator because she cannot hear for shit. So she just says what she thinks everyone has said. Celia, what like, knowing Sophia a little bit better than the rest of us, what are your thoughts when you see Estelle Getty for the first time?
I mean, she really does just come in like a freight train. And I actually had the thought that I think this is probably true for Susan Harris as she was writing it, but I feel like it's probably true in the writer's room too, that when they got to like Sophia, they were like,
yeah,
yes. It was just like, let's just fucking go. It was just like joke after joke and like no holds barred. It just felt like the show took on a whole new life the second she entered, which I feel like is probably also why they were like, thank you, Coco. We're moving away from you and we're bringing her on 100%. Permanently. Because she just felt like, I just can imagine that moment in the writer's room when you get to like pitch jokes on Sophia. So I think she was just a delight from the second she came on. That I and then the relationship between her and Dorothy was instantly clear for me, instantly connected. I think she's,
I think she also serves as just like a perfect voice of reason for everyone else. Everyone else in the show kind of transitioning into old age, and her just being like, "Yeah, that's what it is. Get over it. I have done this." It gave me a little bit of comfort of knowing that like I'm probably going to feel this in my 50s and 60s, and I also am probably going to feel like Sophia in my 80s. Like that's 100%. Like, I don't know. It's just like very comforting to me that she came in and just wasn't going to be sentimental about her old age. She's just going to be who she is.
Yeah. Sophia reminds me so much of my Polish, straight out of Poland grandmother. Like, if they chose to be like, Estelle, we know you're not Polish, but we want you to try this out a little bit, just for us. Like, and maybe it makes the pilot, maybe it doesn't. I would have just felt so at home, and I would have been waiting to like, it gives that vibe. And I say that because I want to talk about how old the women of the show were when they filmed, because they don't really talk about it at all in the pilot, but it's something that I find so remarkable in that Bea Arthur and Betty White were both 63 when the show premiered. Rue McClanahan was the youngest on the show at 51, but then Estelle Getty who plays B. Arthur's mother, was a year younger than B. Arthur in this. And that, like, one, I thought the makeup that they did for her was fantastic. Like, it did a very good job of hiding that, you know, you see photos of her at the premiere and you're like, what the fuck happened here? But then at the same time, you're just like, wow, like, that's just how talented the four of them were. And the Dorothy and Sophia relationship was that we felt that, like, oh yeah, we've all been with our older parent and been like, yeah, this is what it sort of is like. Yeah.
That's so fascinating. I mean, I knew that Rue McClanahan was the youngest. I didn't know she was 51. That's really young when I think about it. But I also like think about what those ages look like now. Yeah. Like what people look like at 63 now. And it's like, my mind is a little bit blown.
There's also the element of like, there's a lot of like widowing in this, in this. And I'm like, these are some young ages for these husbands to die. I think it would be a fun dark twist that all of them at some point murdered their husbands. I think that'd be just like a fun backstory for them all to have.
Fun crossover to have Murder, She Wrote, Jessica Fletcher come in and solve the crime.
This is a show that reminds you that if you are tired of doing your skincare routine, to keep your skincare routine up. That is, if you were like, oh, 5 steps is too many, nope, do each and every one of those steps. And
it also teaches you that it's okay to make fun of your friends' routines. As B. Arthur says that Blanche has more colors than a Benjamin Moore paint, I believe.
Yeah. So good.
So one of the things, if you're listening to us or watching us, you probably are noticing that we're not really talking about the plot lines too much of this show.
Not even the day. So we're really honoring the show.
But, like, I think that the plot lines aren't really the main focus of this show. It's more about the jokes and the interaction amongst these amazing actresses. Sure, we talk about, you know, Blanche goes to Joe's Stone Crabs. What a great mention of a South Florida institution. She got the Stone Crabs. I hope that someone also got a steak because it's great there. But, you know...
Friend of the pod, Joe's Stone Crabs.
Joe's, if you want to send me a box of Stone Crabs when it's in season,
it would make this whole podcast worth it.
Just swipe into my DMs. They are open for Joe's and only Joe's. But as we go through, we just get a few small things. Blanche said yes to Harry, this guy that she met. They're going to get married tomorrow, I think is what ends up happening. And then what this small plot device allows is for the chaos of a wedding or a second marriage to ensue. And Max, like, utilizing that, what were some of the things that you enjoyed about, like, seeing this day of wedding and seeing these characters sort of deal with the idea of, oh shit, we're going to lose the house because Blanche owns it?
Yeah, I think it gives, well, everyone a chance to reveal something personal about how this decision will affect them. This gives us a really lovely scene between Dorothy and Rose where we learn about Dorothy's character and how she kind of had a spontaneous shotgun wedding 38 years prior or so, and what that did for her life. We understand what it means, you know, if they don't have each other, and we get a little bit of exposition on how they came together. But it also just creates, you know, what's the chaotic scenario that we can now put everyone in. We've spent 2 acts establishing relationships and doing jokes and getting character background. Now we're going to, you know, tease what they can do when they're all kind of firing on all cylinders. And so it's not like a drawn out plot. Like, this really comes to a head in the last few minutes of the show, and it just allows you to use everything you've built towards to just start like firing off jokes and hitting you like really quickly with like little plot devices and how we go through this. And I'm glad we didn't drag it out over the course of the entire episode.
For sure. Yeah. So let's fast forward through some things. Blanche is getting ready. Harry is not there yet. Instead of Harry, we get a police officer who informs us that Harry has many other wives across many other states.
I have to shout out that police officer, Meshach Taylor of Designing Women fame.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love me, Chuck Taylor. Love
Oh man.
Yeah.
Also, like, the fact that bigamist is just like a thing that the police would show up to your door about.
I love that the cop, that was one of the greatest moments. The cop's like, I'm just here to wrap this up. Here you go. Bigamy? Yeah, we arrested him for that.
That's what I was saying. Like, the little characters here, the cop who just shows up and it's like, he's a hustler. I'm sorry. And the reveal of the minister needing like to wrap this up because he has to go get a body in the ground. And just that, I don't know that actor's name, but him getting up and just saying, you won't be needing me today is I want that one line. I want that one line part so bad for my career when I'm a little bit older.
That would be great on the IMDb.
So it's so good.
This all leads to an interesting end of this pilot in which we sort of dive into the concept of mourning, right? And Blanche goes into the idea of how she is mourning. She sort of just secludes herself. Weeks have gone by to our understanding. I did really love the Dorothy going through how everyone mourns, right? Mm-hmm. I thought that was so wonderfully appropriate. I do have a question for each of you of like, how do you mourn? But we don't need to talk about that. We can talk about that after the pod.
Well, that was my original question of the week.
Oh, let's all talk about Lost.
Oh, no, Lost is in like 2 weeks.
But this show ends on such a lovely note of just these four women together on a patio with each other, knowing that they have each other to get through these later stages of life. And that really is our pilot. Mm-hmm. We talked about a lot of things that we loved about this show, about this pilot episode of TV, but were there any things that we loved that we did not get to on today's episode?
For me, just 2 beats in the epilogue. I love Dorothy holding the mirror under Sophia's nostrils to ensure that she's breathing. And then the payoff punchline of "you never know" when she's breathing. And just then the final Sophia line of "the fancy man and I are going to the dog track." I like when you add another dimension into a character at the very end to show like, oh no, she's not just, the feeble old mom. She's also like this firecracker. And it's like says to the audience, like in future episodes, these are the hijinks that Sophia's going to get into. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's a very piloty move, but I also just laughed out loud. I laughed so many times, like physically, audibly laughed out loud at this show. And I guess that's the thing that I love that we didn't get to mention. I just laughed so freaking much watching this.
That was also that one line is also an exposition dump to prove that they're in Florida, that they're taking them to the dog track.
Oh, so The Simpsons takes place in Florida. Got it. Cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. FYI. We cracked the
code. Celia, what about you? Any things that you loved about this pilot that we did not talk about today?
Well, there was one beat one moment that I loved that we sort of talked about briefly, but I didn't say anything, which is that moment, that chaotic moment, the wedding, just as Rose wants to tell Blanche that she has this hunch that Harry is garbage. Yeah. And the choreography of that whole scene as B. Arthur is trying to keep her quiet and she's like doing this, and the whole relationship that's happening between the two of them that Blanche does not pay attention to because she's in her own little world. That was such a perfect, that's why you hire these actresses. That's why these actresses are in this. They are comedic geniuses. They're theater actresses. They know how to do this. They execute it perfectly. It's brilliant. It's a moment that I had sort of, forgotten about because I haven't watched this pilot in a really long time. And I just was sort of marveling at how fucking precise and perfect it was. It was every beat of that whole scene.
I couldn't agree more.
And then I also just think that as you're talking about this pilot, it's interesting to talk about it with people who don't really know the series as well, because I think this pilot does exactly what it is supposed to do. It makes you want to spend a lot of time with these people. It gives you a basic plot so you have it. But the truth is, we're just here to hang out with these women. And they do exactly that. They give you joke after joke after joke. They make you want to hang out with them. And then in the end, you have a kind of a lovely moment talking about something much bigger than this show. Aging, feeling alone, and I think that translates to all kinds of people. I don't think that has anything to do with age necessarily, the loneliness you feel.
Yeah.
And I think that is what makes it resonate. And I think I hope you'll all keep watching, as you keep watching the show, you'll see that they really tackle some heavy conversations and the jokes are still perfect and tight.
Yeah.
Like the jokes are still rapid fire and nonstop. And I think, I guess I didn't even realize what a perfect pilot that was in terms of like, this is what you're going to get. This is what you're going to get for the next 8 years. You're going to love it. Generations are going to be watching it, and I'm going to be a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
Rich, what about you?
I also absolutely love the physical comedy of that one scene in the bedroom of Blanche showcasing her wedding dress and everything. Because I mean, like you said, Celia, they were. There's no way on earth people came in with the expectation of, oh, we're going to have like an almost Three Stooges or Marx Brothers level of physical comedy in addition to just absolutely nailing every single joke like immediately. And I just really, I was so impressed with it. They just like exceeded so many of my expectations of the show. And I mean, yeah, it's hard to not keep talking about how great this was.
Yeah. And for myself, I think that this was such a refreshing show to see something that is an older TV show that is being led by just 4 amazing actresses and not pulling punches, as we've been talking about, just letting them go and letting there be amazing writing that they can use. And I almost just want to summarize everything that you all have said, right? Like, this is just, it's so well done. But with that being said, any wait a minute moments from this pilot that we need to discuss? Max, it looks like you have something on your mind.
Yeah, I do have one bone to pick with B. Arthur early on and her egregious slander of enchiladas rancheros. Where in response to that being made for supper, she says, "Just shoot me."
I'm going to go ahead and posit that it's because she's older and cheese is backing up on her recently, and it's probably going to be painful later, and that it's not just shade on enchiladas rancheros.
Why these women all need to be Jewish? That is
this is the thing. If she'd just been like, I have Jewish stomach.
Yeah.
That's why I can't have enchiladas anymore.
Oh, God. Yes, I needed that scene. I needed each of them to explain from a dietary standpoint why they did not. They would stuff, yeah.
Everything that was wrong with each of them dietary restrictions-wise.
As an increasingly lactose intolerant Jewish person,
increasingly.
I felt her on a cellular level.
Rich, what about you? Any wait a minute moments for you?
Oh God, I really don't think so. Like I was starting to feel from the first like couple scenes that I was worried that Rose would be a little one dimensional with her just being kind of like the dum dum in the group. But I'm like, I think she definitely pulled herself out of it, and the fact that she actually had like the, I don't know, the prescience, I guess, to understand that there was something weird about Harry, which I think probably, I have to imagine this is just going to be, we're the writer's room is just throwing a new male red flag into this group of 4 women, like with every episode. And that I could see that coming, like, and I can't wait to watch more. But yeah, that's about it. I was like a little bit worried that she would be a little too one dimensional with the playing the dumb person, but she eventually pulled herself out of it. And the direction, I guess, that Sophia goes after this, where she is a little bit less callous with the jokes and just like not just being the person where all the writer's room people can say like, well, what if we make fun of this group or nationality or sexual?
She has her share.
Yeah.
I don't want to say she doesn't. She has her share. I mean, there are certainly moments that I've watched an episode and I'm like, wow, okay. That's a problem. But then there are other moments where it's like, holy shit, that character really like is pretty spectacular in her.
I just like I think this is one of the a show that I had like the fewest, especially for a show being this far in the past at this point, this far removed from PC internet culture and everything like that. I think this has like the fewest amount of notes that I would have for a script from this era. So it was honestly pretty impressive that they were able to pull that off.
Celia, was there anything that, rewatching this pilot gave you a second of like, oh yeah, this was made a while ago?
I mean, I feel like some of the cocaine jokes, I was like, maybe let's don't paint Miami as like a coke-addled city, but I was actually kind of waiting for something really to like be appalling, and nothing really hit. More as a writer, I was like, wow, this Coco thing really is a mistake. Like, I just,
Coco
beyond
is the wait a minute.
beyond the sort of other conversation, I was just like, wow, that's a real bummer. It's a real bummer as a writer, because it's like, okay, so that clearly didn't work. But also as an actor, man, to be fired off a pilot, that blows. So I just have a lot. I feel for Coco, but he really was kind of an ancillary,
So it's less cocaine and less Coco, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, less Coco.
Less Coco.
I think there's also an element too of like, you don't want Coco adds like a layer of feebleness, I guess, to all of them as well. Like they can't cook for themselves, and like Blanche is 51, everyone else is like 62, 63. I'm like, they're fine. They got a handle on that.
Well, and it was just I just never quite understood, and I wonder if maybe like Susan Harris also didn't really feel the Coco thing, and it was kind of a like, well, we got to have a guy in here, to sort of, I don't know, people don't want to watch women, I suppose, but I wonder if she was also feeling this because there's not a lot of clear reason why he's there. I don't know why he is in the house. I don't know why he's hired. I don't know. It's not like he seems to do very much for them in terms of relationship.
Does Blanche like come from money? Is that like her backstory?
She does come from money.
Okay.
Yeah, like to your point, I even asked you at the beginning of the podcast, tell us more about Coco, and you very succinctly put, we can't. Like, this is it. This is all we get. I like to imagine what is the alternative universe where Coco exists through at least a full season. I mean, what does that look like?
To be very honest, I would have really enjoyed the Blanche Coco vibes, like hanging out in Miami, dating in Miami.
Oh, hell yeah.
That would have been very fun to watch. But that's a different show.
Yeah. My only wait a minute moment that I'm going to actually already redact is Blanche has a great line that is, we are going to New York for the honeymoon. I hope we don't get murdered. But that also perfectly fits Blanche. So I have to take that away as like the Southern woman that she presents herself as.
Also, what a terrible honeymoon destination. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, God, there's so much walk you have to do.
Right?
New York is exhausting.
They're staying in a hotel in Times Square. That is what their honeymoon is.
That is my nightmare.
Yeah, Ed Koch really catching some strays of the Golden Girls pilot, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cocaine 80s and murderous Times Square are really not doing well after this.
So we do have an in-flight question. In-flight questions are brought to us by folks who listen to our podcast, either through DMs or through voicemails. Today's in-flight question is very simple. Which of these Golden Girls do you think you are the most like? Celia, since you are our expert on this show, I'm only going to let you choose one. Which of these Golden Girls do you think you are the most like?
I want to be a Blanche, but I'm probably a Dorothy.
Dorothy's solid. If you told me I was a lot like B. Arthur, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'll take that to the grave.
Queen of the slow burn. Dorothy later in some episode sometime appears on Jeopardy, and I feel like, and she gets like way intense about it, and I feel like that's like really who I am at my core.
That's amazing. Rich, what about you?
I'm definitely a Rose. I learned that from the first 3 minutes of the show. And then I wish I was more of a Sophia, though. Sophia just looks like she's going to get herself in some hijinks and, kind of shoots from the hip a lot, which I wish I just had a little bit more of. So I am, what was it, Sophia Rising? Or,
Yeah.
And Rose Sun.
Sure.
Yeah.
Max, what about you?
I mean, although we don't see much of this person, I've got to be a Coco. I love making Mexican food and gambling.
You do love that here.
I do. If we're keeping it to our main group, though, yeah, I definitely have my Rose moments. I can't fault it,
Yeah. I told Rosie in our Sex and the City episode that I got a hot dog cart for my BuzzFeed quiz answer.
And I am the city of Miami. No, in all seriousness.
I am cocaine.
In all seriousness, I would have to say that I am probably a Blanche, in all honesty. The hopeless romantic definitely is something that I associate myself with as a whole. Well, thank you for that in-flight question. We'll talk a little bit more about submitting those as well as suggestions for the show. Let's talk a little bit about the legacy of this, because this is one of the most fun times I've ever had compiling a legacy of a show. This show had 7 seasons and 180 episodes. All of them were on NBC. This show, at its peak, was the number 4 show in the country of anything. It was, and that was only in its 3rd season. The best ratings I could find as far as average viewers was in season 4. The first 3 seasons was not available. This is our best viewed show at 33.1 million viewers per episode.
Yow.
What makes that even more insane was that made it only the number 6 TV show in season 4.
God, our
and
we're watching so much TV.
The even more insane part was this show premiered on NBC's at 8 o'clock at night, which is just on Saturdays. Excuse me. There's the interesting part. It's just such a wildly different landscape than what we live in today, where if you got a pilot sold to NBC and they said, hey, you're our Saturday at 8 p.m. slot, you have a 3-episode pilot or show at max. This is really just, it's a universally acclaimed show. The Writers Guild of America called it one of the top 101 written TV series. TV Guide called it one of the top 60. Very similar echelons of credentials right there. Supposedly, this is one of my favorite facts ever. During the 1988 Royal Variety Show, Queen Elizabeth was such a large fan of this show that she invited the 4 main actresses to the Royal Variety to perform skits for her of scenes of the show,
so cool.
Which is bonkers. As far as nominations go, there were 122 nominations for the show, 37 wins. That includes 11 Emmy wins. There was actually each of the leading actresses won an Emmy for the show. There were 68 nominations for Emmys, 21 Golden Globe noms with 4 wins. And let's just talk about syndication. It started reruns in 1989, replacing Wheel of Fortune when that left NBC. You know, how comical that we're filming this the week that Pat Sajak is no longer going to be on the Wheel of Fortune. With that being said, it's gone to Lifetime, Hallmark, WETV. We watched it on Hulu. Rich watched it on a Ukrainian black website because he refuses to watch anything on the actual website that it is on. There was a film, and by film, I mean Fathom Events had a special event where they showed 5 episodes on big screens across the country, which is so cool. All of the seasons are available on DVD, also amazing. As far as spin-offs, 3 different major spin-offs of this show. I don't want to talk about them because we're probably going to do them on this show, in all honesty. But there were multiple international versions of this show that existed because of the popularity of it, because it was syndicated in other countries. And, you know, it's nice to have representation on screen for the storylines that you love. So Chile, Egypt, Greece, Israel, Netherlands, Philippines, Russia, Spain, Portugal, Turkey, and the UK as
Jeff,
well.
there's still time. You could still get your Polish Sophia.
And so
Yeah.
I'm going to Poland. I'm taking a flight right now. There's nothing going on there right now. There was also, I will say, there was a Golden Girls themed restaurant that was partially owned by Rue McClanahan. That closed, unfortunately, in 2022. But that is the legacy of this show, and I'm slightly out of breath.
Wait, can I just share one piece of trivia that I love?
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah.
About this show. So I had heard this story, but I wasn't sure if it was apocryphal. And then I talked to this man who ran the show, and he confirmed that it's true, which is that originally Rue McClanahan and Betty White were cast in opposite roles.
What?
Oh.
Yeah. And they both were kind of like, we've done this before, because they had been on Mary Tyler Moore and they had been on Maude and Mama's Family, and sort of played like Rue McClanahan had always played the sort of Rose vibe role, and Betty White had always played the Blanche role. And so they ended up switching roles after they'd already been cast. And I just love that story so much because, again, like I cannot imagine them playing different roles than they do. And yet, you know, that was how it was originally done.
Oh, that's so fun.
So I just thought I would share that piece of trivia.
I've got a couple more pieces of trivia for everybody. We got a short little game of the week, but I wanted to, I guess we'll go around the group for this. Okay. Actually, you're not going to get that question because you can see the answer. All right. All right. Max, what movie was partially credited or partially funded with acting residuals from Golden Girls? Was it Heathers, Casino, Dirty Dancing, or Reservoir Dogs?
Oh.
And they all came out around the same time. I wanted to make sure that was...
I was just about to ask.
I am going to go with Reservoir Dogs. That feels like the most like we had to scrap together some money to get this thing made on that list.
You are correct. Quentin Tarantino, while producing Reservoir Dogs, used a $600 residual check from playing an Elvis impersonator on Golden Girls to make the movie.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness. What?
Okay, Jeff. George. Okay. Did George Clooney appear as a guest actor on Golden Girls before or after his start on ER?
Before?
Yeah, it was before. It actually, Golden Girls, it was a trick question. Golden Girls ended before ER started. All right.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was doing like flips in my head being like, there's no way ER started after.
Okay, Celia, this one's for you. Which one of the cast members served in the military and what branch?
B. Arthur. She was a Marine.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Oh my God.
B. Arthur served as a typist and truck driver in the Marines during World War II. And I'll do the last one for Jeff because you can see the least of this. All right. This show obviously was it was kind of like a who's who of writing rooms. Like everyone nearly came out of this show with a crazy job or like a development deal or, you know, start working on movies immediately. So former Golden Girls writing staff members have been part of the creation of all but what project? 2.5 Men, Van Wilder 2, Rise of Taj, Terminator 2, and Arrested Development.
I want one of these to not be included so badly. I'm going to say Terminator 2 is the one that...
This Terminator 2, I realize that's the only not comedy in the list.
Yeah, that would be Whip's ass, though. We gotta give it its credit.
Yeah, if anything, we're a big Terminator 2 fan podcast. But yeah, 2.5
We do love our future billionaire daddy, Ryan Reynolds, very much on this podcast.
Yeah, as Ryan Reynolds continues to buy everything around us, we will eventually be a Ryan Reynolds owned podcast.
Oh my God. Well, Rich, thank you so much for your game of the week. There's just 2 more questions for each of you that I have. And one, very simple. Would you continue, based off of this pilot, watching the Golden Girls? But the second is, I think, a little bit more something that is realistic. Do you think that this show should come back in an updated version? Maybe just take the pilot, throw in new actresses, and refilm it? If so, I'd love to hear. But Max, I'd love to hear from you first. Would you continue watching the show?
Oh, yes, to keep watching it in Sharpie. That's such an easy decision. I had belly laughs watching this. It is just truly a joke machine, and in a modern landscape dominated by serialized kind of funny shows or comedies that have maybe one funny person in them. Just what a breath of fresh air to just be bombarded with this ensemble that's just joke after joke after joke. It's remarkable in that way. To your second question, no. I'm a hard no, and the reason for that is that I don't think we should limit ourselves to just trying to rehatch the Golden Girls. I think that's the easy way out. I think that's the cop-out way to do it. I think that there should be a challenge and a pressure and a bar raised to make new shows and new stories that feature actors of these demographics, of these ages, telling stories that are unique to them and their experiences. We should find leading roles for this kind of talent. We shouldn't limit them to just, the moms and the sidekicks and, throwaway comic relief. And to just do Golden Girls again, it's only going to put it in comparison to this show. Whereas I think there's so many ideas left unsaid, left untold, that we should fight to get onto TV.
Yeah.
Rich, what about you?
Wow, I couldn't have said that better myself, but I'm going to try. No, I'm kidding. And here I go. No, I 100%. This was one of the hardest shows that we've done to not immediately hit next episode on my Ukrainian Black site website.
It's very hard to click on that website. That's
so many pop-up windows. I 100% would watch the second episode of this. I'm probably going to binge the hell out of this show. If we're talking about whether or not it can be made today, or like whether or not it's going to be rebooted or anything like that, I mean, like Max said, I don't want another Golden Girls. However, do I think it's going to happen? Yeah, I absolutely 100% think it's going to happen. Now that all of the cast members have sadly passed away, I don't think there's enough holding back a studio from doing this. However, we are finally seeing like a kind of a tapering off of spinoffs and reboots and stuff like that, because I think people are finally like not into it enough anymore. Like, it's not the kind of the nostalgia factor is worn off a bit. So do I think it's still going to happen? 100%. Do I want it to happen specifically with the Golden Girls like franchise? No. I would love to see some like new stories that would come about for this, but I still want like extremely joke dense material like this. That's never going away. I want that all the time.
Celia, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I'm definitely going to do a rewatch now that I've started.
Oh yeah, that's why we're here.
Yeah, that's the plan.
It's to get people to watch Bones for 3 seasons.
Huh?
It's to get people to watch Bones for 3
seasons. Oh, Jesus. I have a friend who's a writer on Bones. Keep watching it. She can, we'll give her the money. Yeah. I agree with Max. I think this show was lightning in a bottle. The magic of these women cannot be repeated. Mm-hmm. The magic of the show cannot be repeated. I do think like shows have tried to do some version of it, and like, they're not successful. But I just think a reboot of this show, there's no way to top this.
Yeah,
I do agree that we need more stories of people who are older living their lives in a more truthful way. I think we do need to see those stories. And I think I think there's space for that. I think it just takes some brave executives to say yes.
That's awesome. So I will make this 4 yeses as far as continuing to watch this show. Max, you said it so well about not rehashing something that's already been successful. Do I think that TV executives will listen to us on this podcast? I thank you for the listen. I really appreciate it. But 2,
Brendan Tartikoff, thank you for listening.
From beyond.
Oh my God. I think that there is a possibility that there's going to be an executive that says, let's not redo every single Golden Girls episode. Let's do one and have some big name actresses come in to fill those shoes. Sort of like what we've seen CBS and ABC doing recently with stuff like The Wonder Years and The Odd Couple and stuff like that.
I thought you were going to say and make it a movie and call it 80 for Brady.
Well, it's funny you bring up Jane Fonda because literally I'm thinking about the stories that I am seeing and some of the roles that I am seeing older actresses play. Like Gracie and Frankie just ended, right? And that was I think that's the closest we have gotten to the Golden Girls vibe without just calling it the Golden Girls. Also featuring Sam Waterston. Right, like that's sort of what that show is. But yeah, I want to see more actresses who are established and towards the end of their careers just kicking ass. Like Helen Mirren in Fast and the Furious every single time. I will just watch Helen Mirren in Fast and the Furious. Fuck Vin Diesel. Just give me 2 hours of Helen Mirren in a McLaren.
Oh, I misheard that sentence entirely.
Wait. Does Helen Mirren fuck Vin Diesel?
That's what I heard.
Yes, they do.
Really?
They get so close to having sex every single movie.
Really?
That it's like, this is not a movie podcast, but go and watch Fast and the Furious and try to tell me that they don't have sexual chemistry.
Well, now I'm going to watch.
Yeah, no.
All I want is for Helen Mirren and Vin Diesel. That's incredible. All right.
It's like they are so close to doing it that like now it's all I want. With that being said, though, our plane is coming to a land.
Wow.
But it looks like we are getting a call from inside of our plane.
Hi, I know some podcasts don't appreciate recommendations, so if that is the case, please feel free to ignore this. Yeah, but I really enjoyed the podcast, and I was wondering if you'd like to take another visit to another Shondaland or Shonda Rhimes property. If so, highly recommend Scandal.
Yeah.
It's a fun show. Very engaging pilot. But yeah, I really enjoyed the show. I hope you guys are doing well. My name's Sydney, and yeah, I'm really enjoying watching. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Well, boys, I think we're going to Shondaland on our next flight and going to be talking about Scandal.
Parking is so expensive.
Oh gosh. Well, we'll see you all next week in Shondaland. But before we depart, since our plane has landed, I think everyone would like to know where we can find y'all. Celia, first of all, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. It was such a delight to have you. Where can folks find you if they want to get a little bit more?
Really just Instagram. I'm off of all social media for my mental health except Instagram. Speaking of Shondaland, I worked on a show called For the People, so I'm a former resident of Shondaland, and you can check that out if you'd like to watch a fun procedural that's not been off the air for a minute, but it was a good time. And otherwise, support labor, support workers. If you would like to help people affected by the strike, please make a donation to the Entertainment Community Fund if you have it. That's it.
And we will make sure to have that link in the description of this podcast as well as underneath our YouTube so that folks can click and contribute.
That would be great. I want to say that's for people who aren't WGA. That's for people who can't access the WGA strike fund, but for workers who are being affected by the work stoppage and need some assistance with rent, groceries, bills, etc.
Absolutely.
So they keep making our favorite shows that we'll all talk about in 9,000 podcast episodes.
It's true.
Rich, what about you? Where can we find you?
You can find me eating enchiladas rancheros in 112-degree humid heat in Miami, and also on Instagram at Damn That's Rich.
Max?
You can find me at Joe's Stonecrab. I just put our name down for a table of 4 if y'all can meet me there soon.
Yeah.
You can find me on all things social media at Maxwell Singh.
And you can find me trying to explain to the Drug Enforcement Agency that, yeah, I am under 80, and I did live in Miami, but that's not my job. You can also find me at Run Jeff Run on Instagram and Twitter. You can find the TV Pilots License on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, as well as anywhere you listen to podcasts at TV Pilots License. If you have a question about the show or for our next episode, make sure to be watching Scandal. You can email us at tvpilotslicense@gmail.com or give us a call at 213-290-1713. Make sure to watch out for our Instagram for sneak previews of some of our upcoming episodes, as well as where we take questions. But with the plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you again soon. And until then, thank you for being a friend.
And if you threw a party, everybody ever knew.
Support labor, Jeff. Support your local cocaine smuggler.